What's up guys, my name is Ace, and a couple days ago we got that second nerf to the DMR, which in my opinion at least, it has opened up a lot of room for other guns to come out and play. Before that patch, the game had been plagued by the DMR for quite some time, to the point where if you were trying to compete, it was really your only option. Now, it's still a very usable gun, but I would say it's no longer that dominant gun that you can't compete against now. At longer ranges, snipers and marksman rifles will absolutely dominate DMR users. At closer ranges, this is where the SMGs and the close range ARs will once again still be dominating those DMR users. And then at mid-range, this is where the DMR is still going to be excelling, but there are still several guns out there that compete very effectively with the DMR at mid-range. And now that this nerf has happened, I've had a ton of people wondering which guns are good, what other guns should I be trying out? So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 guns from Black Ops Cold War that I think are great alternatives to the DMR and that I encourage you guys to try out. Now, the reason I'm focusing on just Cold War guns for this video is most people already know how the Modern Warfare guns perform, and many people are still trying out Cold War guns for the first time in Warzone, and they don't really know where they stand and how they perform. A bunch of the Modern Warfare guns are incredible to use, and I do recommend going back and using some Modern Warfare guns as well, but today's main focus is going to be on the Cold War weapons. Also, I am going to give you guys some early example class setups for these. These are by no means set in stone, and they might actually have some issues with them, but the problem is, currently, the attachments from Cold War are completely screwed up in Warzone, and the descriptions and everything mean basically nothing. So I'm kind of guessing at this point with many of these attachments, and I do plan on going into more depth with each one of these guns individually in the future, and with those I will do detailed attachment testing. And hopping right into it, one of my favorites at the moment is the Groza. Now this is a gun I already broke down in my full assault rifle breakdown for Warzone weapons, and this gun is just great. It deals 36 damage to the upper torso, and it has the exact same rate of fire as the Grau, which only deals 28 damage to enemy players. So you're dealing way more damage with the same fire rate, and what this means is we get a very solid time to kill potential against an enemy with full health and full armor. You will be able to kill them in 480 milliseconds if you're hitting those upper torso shots. And anything under a 500 millisecond time to kill to the body is an incredibly fast time to kill in Warzone. So the Groza is just an obvious choice here. It's really good at close to mid-range. The recoil will start to get to you if you're trying to stretch those ranges out and challenge people at, like, let's just say 75 meters plus. Anything beyond about 75 meters, I don't really feel comfortable challenging them with a Groza, but this is why I will typically pair it with a sniper rifle or a marksman rifle to handle those long-range fights, because the Groza holds its own up close against SMGs just fine. So that is the first one that I highly encourage you guys to give a shot if you haven't already yet. You're probably going to be very pleasantly surprised with it. Next up, sticking with the Cold War assault rifles, the FFAR. This gun is also incredible at just melting people at relatively close ranges. Again, just like with the Groza, this one doesn't really excel when you try to stretch those ranges out, and if anything, I actually feel less comfortable challenging people at range with the FFAR, but it kills even faster than the Groza up close at just 462 milliseconds. So again, up close and personal, you're going to be beating out most SMGs just fine with this gun, and you can stretch the range out a little bit to the point where at mid-range, you're still going to be absolutely deleting people because you're just killing them so quickly with this gun. Again, just like with the Groza though, we do have that similar downside where it just isn't very good at long ranges. The recoil really starts to take over, and with this one, I would say beyond about 60 meters or so, I really don't feel comfortable challenging people. So this is another situation where if I am using the FFAR, I will usually run it overkilled with a sniper or a marksman rifle, so I can use those for the longer range engagements. But let's move on to the next gun on my list here, and we're actually going to move into the LMG category here. This is the Stoner 63. Out of all of the Cold War LMGs, this one is the pretty clear winner. And the reason for this is we deal 37 damage to the upper torso, which is quite a bit, and it makes our time to kill potential up close 499 milliseconds. Which again, anything 500 milliseconds or less is an incredibly fast time to kill in this game. And another really nice thing about the Stoner is its recoil is super easy to control. There is almost no horizontal recoil whatsoever. It's just straight vertical, and vertical recoil is really easy to manage. And therefore, this is the type of gun where even at longer ranges, you can just be picking people off, no problem. I wouldn't be pairing this one with a sniper rifle. This would be sort of my primary gun that I'm using in most situations aside from close quarter situations where I will typically pair it with an SMG, because at the end of the day, it is an LMG, and this is the reason that it's probably not going to become a top tier meta gun. It's just not versatile enough because it does have a fairly slow sprint out time and fairly slow aim down sight time, and its mobility is also quite low. Having said this though, it is still an excellent option to use, and if you treat it right, you will be dominating people at mid to somewhat longer ranges. Now, moving on to the next gun that I've got on my list here for you guys, this is the M16. Now, I already did my M16 versus AUG comparison, and if you guys watched that, the AUG, in my opinion, is still a decent gun, but it's just not quite as good and versatile as the M16 in Warzone, because it has SMG level bullet velocity. So at really close to mid-range, the AUG is fine, but beyond that, it's kind of useless, whereas the M16 is more designed for the mid to longer ranges, because you get a more accurate burst than the AUG. We have an infinite damage range. We're going to be dealing 40 damage anywhere in the body per bullet at any range, which is amazing. You don't even have to be super precise and make sure you're hitting those upper torso shots or anything. You just have to be hitting the target. And here's the deal. This is where some people might disagree with me. If we're just looking at the raw time to kill, the M16 isn't very good. Our time to kill against a full health and full armored enemy, if we're just hitting body shots, is 916 milliseconds, which for many people, that would make them immediately disqualify this from their list. That is a very slow time to kill. However, sometimes time to kill isn't everything. It's a very important stat for most guns, but in this case, I really feel like just the feel and performance of the gun within the context of many of the gunfights you get into in Warzone, it outweighs that slow time to kill potential. The best way I can explain why I feel the M16 is still a great gun despite its slow statistical time to kill is with each burst that you fire, that burst is going to have a very tight grouping, so it's fairly easy to hit all 3 of your shots out to a decent range. Also, you've got an amazing bullet velocity, especially when using the titanium barrel, which is what I'd recommend using with the M16. And the way that I like to look at this is every time you pull that trigger, it will fire a burst that deals 120 damage anywhere in the body. You don't have to be super precise and hit those upper torso shots. You're just dealing 120 damage almost instantly to your target with one single trigger pull. And even more than that if you manage to land a headshot or two. So when you look at it that way, compared to a lot of the full auto guns out there, when we're looking at mid to longer range fights, it's actually going to end up being more effective in many practical situations that you run into, despite that slower time to kill. So if you guys haven't given the M16 a shot yet, I highly encourage you to do so. I'm already starting to see it pop up a little bit more and more, and I just think it's on the rise at this point, and we're going to end up seeing quite a few M16s in the near future. Now, I do want to be very clear, though, this gun is not very good up close. Up close, you definitely want to pair it with a very solid secondary weapon that you feel comfortable with up close, because this is where time to kill starts to become far more important, and this is not where the M16 competes. But finally, for my list of 5 Cold War weapons here that I want you guys to give a shot, we've got the Cold War MP5. Now, statistically, the Cold War MP5 and the Modern Warfare MP5 are pretty similar. But having said that, the Cold War version technically kills a little bit faster than the Modern Warfare version, and it just has a little bit more recoil. It's still very easy to control and very manageable recoil, in my opinion. So as a close range weapon or as like a secondary weapon to pair with a longer range weapon, the Cold War version of the MP5 is just an awesome choice. Same thing goes with the MAC-10, but I think you guys already know how powerful the MAC-10 is. So that's why for this particular list, at least, I decided to go with the MP5. And with that, that wraps it up for my list of 5 Cold War weapons that I want you guys to give a shot in Warzone. I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised with at least 1 or 2 of the ones on this list. They're not necessarily all going to be for you. And also just a list of Modern Warfare guns that I think are still great, and if you want to go back and start using Modern Warfare guns again, if you've been just using Cold War guns, the Modern Warfare guns I would currently recommend as far as like primary weapons are going to be the AMAX, the Grau, the M4, the AS-VAL, and the M13. All of these guns are still excellent choices to use in Warzone. And for me, I'm probably going to start branching back into those Modern Warfare guns sometimes alongside these Cold War guns that I mentioned in today's video. Now, of course, this list that I made today is somewhat subjective, even though statistically speaking, these guns are all very good as well. But I'd like to know in the comments section below, which of the Cold War guns are your favorite to use currently in Warzone? Is it still the DMR? Are you still using that as your primary weapon? Or is there another Cold War weapon that you're using instead? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.